In part one of this two-part video, we talked about the use and the misuse of the Godard hypothesis in property appraisal. In this video, we will discuss how the Godard hypothesis relates to the appraisal term hypothetical sale and how to improve such definitions in appraisal theory. Some argue for another rationalization for the proper use of the Godard hypothesis in appraisals for property taxation. Within the theory and practice of appraisal, market value is based on the notion of the hypothetical sale. The logic goes like this. Assessed value is based on market value. Parenthetically, it is important to note that assessed value may not be exactly equal to market value in some circumstances, but that's another topic for another video. Market value has been described as being analogous to the sales price that would be negotiated between ready, willing, and able buyers and sellers, each acting in their own best interest without duress. This analogy is so common that it is often presented as the definition of market value. This sale transaction is described as the hypothetical sale. Within the appraisal process, appraisers work under the construct that value they are trying to measure is equivalent to the sale price in this hypothetical sale. If you measure the sale price that would result from this hypothetical sale, then you will, by analogy, measure the value of the property. This is a very useful construct in appraisal practice, appraisal theory, and appraisal education. However, if there were an actual sale, then there will be a change in ownership, and there may be a change in occupants if the seller vacates the property. It is frequently argued that the implications of the hypothetical sale means appraisers must use the sales approach for an owner-occupied, owner-developed property, even if sales in the market are not between owners and occupants. 2, they must include a loss in value from the lost income due to vacancy until absorbed, brokerage and marketing expenses, and tenant improvement costs, even if the building is actually occupied. And 3, they must include economic and/or functional obsolescence in the amount of the cost of any special improvements, even if those improvements are economic and functional to the current user and occupant who does not intend to leave the property. Some appraisers therefore argue that the hypothetical sale means a property goes vacant and goes dark at the moment of the hypothetical sale, thus resulting in substantially lower value. Parenthetically, the word hypothetical as used in hypothetical sale means something different than as used in the Godard hypothesis and as used in USPAP's hypothetical condition. The latter two refer to assumptions that are known to be false at the moments up to the appraisal, whereas hypothetical sale in hypothetical sale assumption is what might happen at the moment of the appraisal. USPAP prohibits some hypothetical conditions. A Godard hypothesis in property taxation is probably prohibited. However, the notion of a hypothetical sale is useful to understanding the idea of market value and is not prohibited by USPAP. On occasions, some of the above assumptions about hypothetical sales are flawed. A hypothetical sale does not mean a forced sale to new owners. Some appraisers are taking hypothetical sale to literally mean that a sale to a new owner and occupant must happen. In other words, that a hypothetical sale must be forced to happen. On some occasions, if a property owner is forced to sell a property and the property is vacant, the next owners and users may not have the same use as the current owner or user, and that may change the highest and best use to a lower productivity use. This would lower the value of the property in question and is not an appropriate hypothetical condition to assume as the basis of value. If the current owner or occupant finds that assets are performing well as intended and they are expected to do so indefinitely, there is nothing under normal market conditions that would force the owner to sell and vacate the property and therefore lose that value. If forced to sell, the current owner would buy another similar building immediately, or would rebuild the current asset immediately, or would immediately lease the sold assets back or rent another similar property. The idea that no other types of users may want this type of asset is not relevant to the maximally productive user. If the current occupant is the only user for this type of property, forcing them to sell would force a sale to a buyer who is not the maximally productive user. That would destroy value and would be in contradiction to the definition of market value, which is based on the maximally productive use as part of the highest and best use. There are a number of concepts to unpack here. Some are topics that we will cover in other videos. Let me quickly state that market value must be based on the highest and best use of the property, which by definition means that the use on which value is determined must be the maximally productive use. Any market value appraisal assumption that prohibits maximally productive use is inappropriate according to USPAP. Further, by definition, market value cannot be based on a forced sale. Forcing a seller to sell to others who do not value the property as much as the seller does not maximize value, and again is an inappropriate assumption according to USPAP when determining market value. Forcing an occupant to sell and vacate is a sale under duress. It is interesting to note that the analogy to a sale is most often presented in appraisal education, where it is used to introduce the idea of market value to beginners and to novices. In more advanced settings, the language in the definition of market value is more nuanced. Consider the following definition presented in USPAP. While this definition refers to a transfer, not a sale, it additionally qualifies the context. A right of ownership could mean the right of an owner-occupant to build, not only buying a property. Further, a bundle of rights refers to the full fee interests, as in sales, but also in partial rights, such as leased fee interests in properties. Basically, the term hypothetical sale is getting misapplied because it is a misnomer for the concept that appraisal theorists and educators are intending. To resolve this problem, I believe the name and the concept should be generalized to account for other types of transactions. It is perhaps better to utilize the term hypothetical transaction instead. Appraisal theory recognizes three types of transactions: a sale, a rental, or constructing a building. Each has its own approach to value: a sales approach, an income approach, and a cost approach. The hypothetical sale analogy incorrectly implies just one type of transaction. In many circumstances, the sales transaction is not the highest and best transaction. Many commercial properties rent much more frequently than they sell. Forcing a sale when rental is the best way to maximize value would destroy value. Further, forcing a sale and vacancy when sales of occupied rental buildings are sold subject to continuing leases would destroy value. Usually, special built properties are neither sold nor rented to their intended users. They are most frequently built and occupied by their intended users. These transactors are only interested in the cost to build and typically disregard what others may buy or rent properties for. When we switch to the term hypothetical transaction instead of hypothetical sale, then we confront the idea that when forced to sell and vacate a property where no other buyers can maximize value, we can alternatively look to rent or look to build a replacement with the same functionality and economics that current owners or occupants find in the space, thereby preserving the value that is actually in place. At some properties, the class of potential users can be as small as one. In such a case, there is no potential for a sales approach to similar users because there is no similar user. However, there is a potential for a cost approach to one user who is the highest and best user for the same use, which is the highest and best use. Further, there is a potential to rent or even lease back the property to that single user. Sale-leaseback transactions are not uncommon for special built properties. Thus, in order to clarify our understanding and explanation of market value, appraisal phraseology should be expanded and generalized to say that market value is not based on a mandatory hypothetical sale, but rather is based on a hypothetical transaction, either as a sale, rental, or new construction, which correspond to a sales approach, an income approach, or a cost approach, respectively. This phraseology reveals the flaws in the application of the Godark hypothesis in property taxation. So let's go over this again. When the dark store theory and the Godark hypothesis are applied in property taxation, a hypothetical sale is sometimes argued to mean a forced sale to a new owner-occupant with the possibility of interim vacancy, even when being forced to sell to the next owner or user who does not have the same value as the current user, and even when this will change the highest and best use to a less productive use. The go-dark hypothesis makes these assumptions even when the current owner is the only user or one of the few potential users for this type of asset, and the asset is performing well as intended and is expected to do so indefinitely. The term hypothetical sale is a misnomer. It should be generalized to account for markets where the class of asset users can be as small as one user and where there may be hypothetical build or rebuild or hypothetical rental or leasebacks. Market value is based not on a mandatory hypothetical sale, but rather a hypothetical transaction, a sales, rental, or new construction, sales approach, income approach, or cost approach. In no case for property taxation should we assume a go-dark hypothesis, which assumes vacancy conditions contrary to facts, and assumes functional or economic obsolescence when at least one user finds no such loss in value. In conclusion, we can avoid much of this confusion if we properly generalize the definition of market value away from the pedagogic analogy as follows. The price that would be negotiated between ready, willing, and able buyers and sellers, or a landlord and tenant, or owner and builder, each acting in their own best interest without duress. We hope this clears up some of the confusion surrounding the go-dark hypothesis, and more generally, the implementation of the hypothetical sale, or rather, the hypothetical transaction in appraisal theory. When applied properly, these tools can be used to effectively assess value, which is critical for appraisals of all types. We'd like to hear from you. Let us know what you think of the video just presented. Provide comments below. If you'd like to see our other videos, subscribe here.